Hello, everybody. Happy New Year, and welcome back to Cup of Hemlock and our online series, The Cup. We are kicking off our new year with our first Duet review of 2021, and this is one I am very, very excited about. And I'm happy to say with me to share my excitement, I have none other than the General Assistant of Cup of Hemlock, Ms. Jillian Robinson. Hello, Jill.
Hello, Mac. How are you doing?
I am doing okay. I've not spent 19 years in prison for a loaf of bread.
Right. True
Yes.
say.
Yeah, exactly. So today, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about one of the longest running musicals of the entire musical theater canon. We are talking about Les Misérables. And we are talking about it today because currently in the West End, they were reviving the staged concert that they had run in 2019. And they had shut it down after they had renovated the Sondheim Theater. This theater had been kind of a temporary hold at the Gielgud just so they could keep their record of longest running show running in the West End. It then reopened at the Sondheim with the new production that's been running since the 25th anniversary. And then unfortunately COVID happened and they shut everything down. And then to make up for that over the holidays, because London moved to a open tier that would have allowed for a socially distanced theater, they revived the stage concert. However, London went back into tier 3, and we will not know the fate of the rest of the concert to run until later on once this recording comes out. But we are fingers crossed for the entire cast in London that they will be able to return to the stage and continue performing the stage concert until the end of February. But
and
June
if
are
not,
going to talk about
there's always tomorrow, right?
There's always tomorrow. Exactly. So, I mean, either way, it'll all work out. We have a lot of recordings of these concerts, so that's what Jill and I are going to be talking about today. We are going to be doing a deep dive, compare or contrast between the 3 different concerts that are available for viewers. There is the original 10th anniversary Dreamcast concert, as it is known, and that came out in 1995, and it was directed by Gavin Taylor, as well as staging by John Caird from the original show clips that were shown during that concert. We then will also be talking about the 25th anniversary concert that was done in 2010, and that was directed by Nick Morris with original staging by Lawrence Connor. And then we are going to be talking about this most recent Les Misérables, the staged concert, which happened in 2019, and that also was directed by Nick Morris and Lawrence Connor. So we'll be doing some compare and contrast of the 3, but this has been a really special musical for both Jill and myself. This was the first musical I ever saw. Growing up, I saw it when I was 3 years old with Colm Wilkinson when he did his return to Toronto. It's been, I'm in my childhood bedroom where these walls have heard this music for a long ass time. But Jill, you also have a very special connection with the show. Why don't you tell us how you're connected to this musical masterpiece?
Yeah, so my immediate family and my extended family love this musical. So ever since I was a kid, too, the music was piped in for sure. And then I have seen it in Detroit, and I also saw it in Toronto. So I've seen it twice. And then I had the privilege of being in it. One of our community theater companies here in Windsor, Ontario, which I'm originally from and spending the pandemic here, they did a production of Les Misérables, and I got to play adult Cosette, which is awesome because as a performer, it's kind of on my bucket list to play Fantine, Eponine. It was Cosette, but I can check that off, and Madame Thénardier. So, so I had the opportunity of playing adult Cosette, so that was a dream come true. It filled my heart with love, one might say. So, and this is my favorite musical. It is so close to my heart and soul. It is so timeless and stunning. And I'm so excited to open up my heart and chat about it with you today, Matt.
Yes. Yes. Well, Joe, why don't you tell us what is in your cup? Because we got to do our inaugural question before we get into this musical. What is in your cup today?
So I actually have the mug from the performance that we did. The company made mugs for us. So this is my Les Mis Les Misérables mug, and inside of it is a French blend of a rosé wine. It's just a spot of it because I've had not a lot to eat today, so we're gonna just have a spot of wine, and then I have a glass of water that I'll probably pour into the mug so we can keep using the mug throughout it. And then I did have a Les Misérables shirt, but it is in Toronto, my apartment in Toronto. So I decided to kind of go for a Cosette Fontaine hybrid kind of look, with the high neck, the white like for purity. I have sort of like pendant looking earrings, tied back hair, and really to kind of pay homage to Michael Ball at the end of the stage concert, pointing out how wonderful and magical it is that a lot of cast members with this musical, they sort of evolve into the older characters, like they start in a younger one, evolve. So me having played Cosette one day, I would be completely honored to play Fontaine. So I'm kind of playing into that hybrid. Something really cute too. One of my very first times being on stage was in grade 5 as the talent show. I sang Castle on a Cloud.
That song.
And my dad bought me a mop from Canada Salvage, which for international viewers, it's sort of like one of our like hardware stores in Canada. And it was like the night before he bought me it, and he's like, "I thought you needed a prop for your first big role on stage," and you
do. You definitely need a mop to play Little Cosette, or a broom, one of the two. Yeah, some type of cleaning appendage.
I remember I ripped up an old t-shirt and like got tea bags and made it look tattered and dirty, and it was like the best project ever. I was such a theater nerd from a young age.
Theater nerd Jill. Theater nerd Jill.
Hasn't gone away.
That.
Yeah.
No. And I mean, I would have been drinking from my Les Mis mug tonight too, but that is also in Toronto. Because as I said, I'm in my childhood bedroom right now, so unfortunately, I do not have access to my Les Mis 24601 t-shirt or my Les Mis mug. I do have my mini Les Mis poster here.
Yes.
That stays with Les Mis poster. There we go. That side. That stays in Barrie at my parents' place. Well, my big one stays in original Broadway big poster. Stays in my wall in Toronto. But Jill, I mean, why don't we get into this sucker?
Let's do it.
Get into this. I mean, I got a feeling we could end up running the same length as Les Mis by the time all this is said and done. We'll see. We will see. So, first off, let's go with overall, how did this recent stage concert compare with the previous anniversary concerts? Would you say, out of the 3, this is the best concert version of the musical?
Okay. And I'm kicking us off, yes? Okay.
Yes.
So I want to start and preface that I do not think any of these versions are bad. I think they're all beautiful and wonderful, and for the times that they were done, they all really do hit the mark, in my opinion. And a lot of that rests on the company's chemistry. Every company had like such rich chemistry. And that's the beautiful thing about this musical too, is that it really thrives on connection and compassion within the entire cast, right? Like there is no small role in this. And it really is a mass of people, right? That is making a movement, that is making a statement. And I think all 3 versions do that beautifully. I also think that every single performer saying that too brought exactly what was needed, including Nick Jonas, which I will say outright because I know he gets a lot of backlash because you could talk a lot about, star-studded a role and sort of them
gimmick
having a bit
casting.
More pressure and stuff. Right. But I think, every person, the heart of the musical rested in everyone's voice.
Yes.
They may not have been the best choice for the role per se, but I still think they did due diligence to their character. So that was already astonishing to me. But I do think this stage version, is the best. And this will happen a lot tonight, but it's because of the acting. This musical is so stunning vocally. like the score is one of the most delicious pieces of theater, of musical theater, because it is just, it's so beautiful. It allows actors to use their entire range and really like you have to sink into the depths of your range on like the low end and the high end in every character, right? It asks a lot of you. But I think the problem with that is it can tend to, and I completely relate to this, it can kind of force the actor down the rabbit hole of only using the voice. And in something like a staged concert, I think that also sets them up in a trap because it's a concert, right? Where like the voice is the prime thing for audiences. But I think this staged concert to me was the best because there was more, still minimal, but movement and choices that were made between characters and staged that way too. Like I'll just straight out say the killing off of the men in the barricade scene. I had goosebumps all over my body and was bawling in this staged concert because watching each one of them get pegged off, the moment for me, Gavroche's death and then his fall once Grantaire dies too, just stunning. And so I think this one, lighting, sound, acting, voice, cast, chemistry, all really synced. And just packed a bigger punch. I actually, all three of them, I felt like, yes, I purchased a ticket for a staged concert. I got more than I asked for. Another beautiful thing about this musical, I think that it easily can be done only ever as staged concerts if it needs to be, right? Like if you have a barricade and you have the chemistry and presence of the cast, you're good in my books.
Pretty good, yeah.
But this last one to me was like, okay, there was just a little bit more gravitas in the acting and the choices that were made. And I think a lot of it too is I can't remember if the 10th anniversary and 25th anniversary had lapels, but this one did. The stage concert did. So it allowed the actors to like, yes, I'm still standing in front of a mic, but if I'm Cosette looking at Marius, I can really look at him and not really worry about directing my voice into that mic. Do you know what I mean? Like it gave the actors more freedom, which I think helps too. So that's kind of like a technical reason why. And I just think there were some, like there's definitely some cast members in the other versions that I would have preferred over the ones in the stage concert. But again, there was enough strength in the other characters that really packed the punch for me that again just added that extra level of camaraderie and lifting the piece a little bit higher than the 25th and the 10th anniversary to me. So
fair.
Yes.
Fair. I mean, I will say this recent stage concert was very good. I like it leaps and bounds more than the 25th anniversary concert. Like leaps and bounds ahead of that one. I did like that there was a little bit more blocking that was done in this particular version. I did feel though, because a lot of the main actors were wearing head mics, you could see that they were wearing head mics to the wig, or wig mic as they're called, that I think the standing mics were more, I almost felt like they were there as like a part of the set versus in the previous concerts where they were actually like a requirement for sound. Like you wouldn't be able to hear the actors if they weren't sitting in front of that mic. So I didn't mind that, but I did feel that was a bit jarring where it's like, well, if you don't need the standing mics, then just take them away and just do a reduced staging of it. You don't like just do it that way versus a kind of like what they did with the 25th anniversary of Phantom of the Opera, where they had a smaller stage. It wasn't a big epic stage. It was kind of a reduced set piece that they could move around a little bit on. So because of that was a little bit of a detractor for me. I also found with this concert, everybody was really clean. Like, there was not a freaking speck of dirt on these people. And that bugged me to no end. And I found sometimes the acting, particularly with the Thenardiers, went over the top or became too schmaltzy. Same with Michael Ball's Javert. It was a little bit too schmaltzy for me at times, or it was a bit too big. And if you've been inside the Gielgud, it's not a big theater. It is a very small. A lot of London theaters, they're smaller. They built up, not out.
Right.
So it'd be like us being inside, kind of like the Royal Alexandra in Toronto, if you're from Toronto, or the St. James if you're on Broadway. Which is a smaller house. So if you're doing these big, broad performances in that small space, it can come across really big.
Yeah.
Which kind of took me out sometimes, particularly with the Thenardiers and a little bit their ad libs. I was like, this feels really like hammy to the point of you're detracting for me.
I agree with that too. Yeah.
Yeah. So because of that, and because this is a concert version where you're more meant to focus on the music because you're taking away other elements. And also, I do have a bias because I did grow up on this, but the 10th for me is I still think is the best concert because of the highlight and the focus on the music and the orchestra, because everything was stripped away, and the fact you could a lot of times see the actors sitting in behind, and you could see the orchestra there, and the fact, and yet you were still full on always watching the people on stage, and there was just that beautiful focus on the music and the score, which is what those concerts are meant to kind of do. I mean, if Kim McIntosh wanted to do a properly staged production, he would do a pro shot. But he loves doing these star-studded concerts because it highlights the music, which is what has been the timeless element. Like, yes, the barricade is great, and there is spectacle with the show, but really it's just the barricade. The rest of the set and the turntable, there's a few big spectacle elements of the show that have kind of were there when it first started, but really was the music. It's the music and the story that get the reason why people kept coming back year after year after year to this show, and why it's been on Broadway or West End now for over 35 years. Like, it's the music and the score, and the fact that the 10th was so focused on that, and the orchestration is my favorite in the 10th, where it's just so big and epic and grand, right from the first downbeat the conductor does in that opening. Like, it just hits you every time like a wall of sound.
Yeah.
And because the vocalists are a lot of the originals, and they're just so strong vocally in that show. They may not be the best actors, I will full on admit. Many of them may not be the strongest actors out of our three casts. Right. But by far they highlighted the music the best, and for that reason I think that is the best concert. Now, I will still happily watch the stage concert because of the acting and the staging elements. But if you have my choice of which one do I think is the strongest concert version that has the best vocals, it would be the 10th.
I think there's something to say too. Like, I think watching these three versions again, the idea of what a staged concert is has vastly changed from 95 until now too. So that was something that was a pill to swallow as well. Like, because I with the 10th anniversary, yes, I think musically everyone was on point and giving their respects to the score in that way. But there was a little bit too much of the actor that I was seeing, the name that I was seeing on stage as opposed to the character. I don't want to see Combe or Leia on stage. You know, I want to see Jean Valjean. I want to see Eponine. And I'm just using those two as an example. Cause,
well, they're two of the biggest names from that concert.
Right. And I think there is that awkward sort of break of, especially in a stage concert. This is something fascinating to just touch on quickly. It's almost like a break of the fourth wall is allowed in a stage concert, because when an individual sings their solo song, they are singing it as the character. It is in the plot of the story, but because it's a staged concert, it's a little bit distanced. So there is that sort of there's that wiggle room of like, am I applauding for Eponine or am I applauding for Leia? And the thing is, like, the audience can do whatever they want. But in my opinion, as the artist, you are not there as yourself. You are there as that character. So by all means, like, stay until the applause swells. Absolutely. Take your spot and hold that in your heart. But there were a couple moments where it was like, okay, Leia and Combe, this is not time for you to take in accolades as Leia and Combe. Like, you are, you know, and it's difficult because they were the names back then too, right? So to their credit, they're even Alfie Boe had to kind of like blow a kiss to the audience to kind of quiet things down in the 25th.
That moment bugs me to no end.
Right, but I mean,
it's more the audience etiquette
there's
that makes
exactly.
That audience etiquette was not there.
There's the game you have to play as the actor too of like, okay, please stop. We need to move on.
Colin Wilkinson does that moment much better after bringing him home, where he just quietly steps back from the mic and disappears from the spotlight. I'm like, much classier than the.
Yeah.
Thank
but
you.
I also just, I don't like that the 10th anniversary is subtitled The Dreamcast. Because again, I think
that's what
it's
it was
a lot
back
of pressure.
then.
Exactly. And that's why I think that being in 95 and then we have a 2010 and then we have a 2019, these are all like vastly different eras of time, right? Where like the idea of a stage concert, the idea of star-studded cast, they're so different, right? So
they're so different. And I mean, the 95 cast, what's beautiful about it is at least half that cast is the original West End and Broadway casts. So there is a bit of that dream-like quality where you're getting reading the production history was Cameron McIntosh specifically cast the 10th anniversary. Like that, like he, out of all three concerts, that was the one he particularly had his strongest hand in, hand selecting people for that concert, because he just went through his decades worth of people and went, you, and you. So I can see why it's dubbed the Dreamcast, and vocally, I would still dub it the Dreamcast, because as I said, out of all three, I think vocally it is the strongest, where like just the power of everybody's vocals are just so there, where like sometimes if you're listening to the other concert versions, it's like we'll get into the other casts.
Yeah.
But like vocally, I think this is a dream concert where everybody from Battemois to the Factory Girl to Colin Wilkinson, it is just that spectrum of sound. But yet each time it's different, right? Because they've adapted the orchestra, they've adapted the score. I mean, even the edits are different in each three of these versions. Like the 10th is the most edited down version, where they've cut a lot of stuff out of it, and reduced it. There's cuts right from the very beginning with Valjean on Parole. It reduced it at the end of the day with the Factory Girls. Like Lovely Ladies is basically cut in half. You lose two-thirds of what that song is. And you lose the Javert's intervention, the robbery, the wedding. The part of Marius at the wedding, Garage's death, and by the time you get to the stage concert, they've added all that back in again. It's a much fuller accounting of the score. So it's a very different. It's so different, and that's what. It's well put that the idea of what these concerts are has absolutely evolved over time.
And I think we can look at the final barricade battle as a perfect example of this. In the 10th anniversary,
it's show clips.
They use the show clips, right? And then you know that the actors are just standing on stage and allowing sort of like the lights and sounds to do what they're doing. The 25th anniversary, same kind of thing. Folks are like standing there, really like feeling the lights and sounds. It's impacting them, right? But then on the stage concert, it physically impacts them.
Yes.
And I think that's where we're at. It's like, and especially now, the world we're living in, and I could probably get into this further in the conversation, but
we will.
When your physicality is sort of put under pressure, under a scope, limited, you can still find a way to move, right? And again, like bawling and goosebumps in the 2019 production. Yeah.
And I definitely think the venue plays a part in that staging, where like the first two are, I mean, the original was done at the Royal Albert Hall, which is a big concert hall in London. Then they did it at the O2 Stadium, which is like an even bigger arena concert hall. And then you go to the Gilda, which is this tiny actual stage where you can't do big projections of the show and big as in the, like they had in the 25th. There was the lighting the lighting grids that came down to make the barricade. In this they had to get a little bit more creative and depend a little bit more on the actual movement of the actor to sell some of that. moments. Very interesting. We're going to get into much more of this.
Yes.
But why don't we head into our second question?
Okay.
Which is, which concert do we feel provides the viewer with the closest representation of the stage show? And we've both seen it live on stage, so we kind of know where they're going. So, Jill, you go first.
So again, kind of already touched on this, but I think the stage concert, the most recent version we have, does this the best. And I really do think it is because the actors were given a bit more blocking, a bit more liberty with their choices. I liked that the venue was actually smaller. I'm glad that you brought that up because that's a good segue. Because it reminds the audience that the actors are on a stage. Because again, with the 10th and the 25th, it very much was like, I'm in an arena watching a staged concert of this musical. Whereas I can see the proscenium. I'm in a theater. It's a small space, yet they're still blocking. And there's, and again, because they had their headset mics, they were allowed to do a lot more. And there were still levels, right? Like, even though it was small,
they had staircases
still level,
that
exactly.
Levels,
I still liked that we got to see the orchestra, and they in the edits, they panned to.
Yes.
I actually really liked the video editing of stage concert because again, there's for some reason there was a moment where they dwelled longer on showing orchestra members. I think it's right before Bring Him Home. If that's the moment I'm remembering. And I, again, got emotional because it, again, reminded me that this is a concert and the musicians are just as important, if not way more important than the actors, right? The actors are like the cherry on top of the giant, wonderful, delicious dessert that you're actually going to eat. So I liked that I was like, oh my gosh, I'm getting emotional by just watching the violinist all in sync or, the solo piccolo, like, so it'd be interesting watching these through a screen versus being in the audience. I think that's a whole nother can of worms to open because, like I said, I really think any of these concerts, you are getting way more bang for your buck because it's just so stunning. But with the video edits and having to watch it like on DVD or on a screen, the staged concert to me was the closest to the versions that I've seen or been a part of.
So I have a split answer once again on this, where I think for the modern production we have now, you could easily strip those standing mics away from the stage concert and stage it, in which gives you a very close approximation to what it would be like if you were to go see Les Mis now. I think the 10th does a really good job at highlighting the original concert because of the actual show clips they showed, where you actually got to see, you didn't have to imagine how the lights would actually be a barricade. Like, you actually get to see the real barricade from the original production swing out and be made in a video clip. And I thought that was a genius bit of editing, because you're right, a lot of times it would just be actors standing in a microphone, because that's just how that 1995 concert was staged. But the fact they were smart enough to go, we can fill the time by actually showing the runaway cart or showing the follow the barricade. So I just thought that was such a really smart way of capturing that original production, because it still felt like you could piece the original pieces enough together that you could actually get the full picture of the story. It's kind of like those intersecting pieces where it's like, well, they're singing a solo, so behind them, there wouldn't be anything behind them anyway. Like, Fantine's down on her knees singing "I Dreamed a Dream" normally, but instead it's just Ruthie Henschel singing in front of a microphone. Like, when they needed to show action, they actually were able to show the real staged action, and you actually got to feel the show that way. Like, even showing the prisoners in the opening doing the look down miming sequence, the fact you actually got to see that and got to see the interactions with the soldiers that informed some of those lines that were being sung. Like, you won't see me here for dust, I think, is the one that's the really aggressive line, and it comes right after the soldiers kicked the prisoner and about to hit him with the butt of the gun, and it's like, oh, dramaturgically, I'm now connecting why that actor's singing so aggressively on stage is not just some random guy doing riffs like they had in the 25th anniversary that, like, just irks me to no end that they were riffing in that. I was like, ugh, no. We're 1800s France people. We don't riff in France in 1800s. We're not wicked. We're Les Mis. Either way. So yeah, I think if you're going to go for a modern look or want to know what the modern production's like, the stage concert, very good. If you're wanting to actually get an idea of what the show is in the action that takes place, you can go for the 10th because those stage clips are just so beautifully pro shot. Like, gorgeous now, what they do.
Those would have been projected for the live audience, right?
Correct. So if you saw in this 10th, there was the two side television or projection screens that were showing the actors. Then in the center, there was always where like the subtitle would show up, like Valjean arrives at the barricade, and in there they would also, from what I understand, from what I've read about people who did see it live back in the day, that is where they would have shown actual stage clips to go and fill those moments in. So
it's fascinating.
It's interesting.
That's as an audience. I mean, as a digital audience member and as a live audience member, two very different vibes are thrown at you, right? Because the 10th anniversary, having to kind of interject a slideshow of pictures, and then while you're still listening, it kind of, in a way, brings you in further, but it also takes you out, right? Because you know that you're not watching what is presented to you in the moment.
Yes.
And then, but then with the staged concert, you don't have the actual in the moment staging, so even more so the body has to do that, right? Or like live that. Which another thing, I think I disagree with you on striking the mics for the staged concert, because I don't think I think the blocking, just from what I saw, it seemed as if it sort of organically came out of like, these are your marks to hit, and then let's blossom into these. So it almost made moments more magical to me, because it was like, oh, that's so cool from in an acting, you know, some of the most intimate conversations are had when characters are apart, like, or on like opposite sides of the stage. So an example of this is, for example, like in the Jean Valjean and Javert square-offs, a lot of the times they were like apart. But then in this blocking, like I think I'm remembering this correctly. I rewatched all three of these like back to back. So I may also get a couple things blending in.
I'll correct you if need
be. But I believe Michael Ball like actually went up to Alfie Boe and put his hand on him.
Yeah,
or like
in the opening,
one of them
in the very first
invaded.
Scene, he uses the baton to turn his face.
The invasion of space, right? It's like, not only are you stepping away from the mic that you were supposedly required to sing at, but you're also like interacting with the character. It just added this element, and a lot of even with like Cosette and Marius, right? It's like you're singing a part, and then as the show evolves, you see them getting closer and closer together, right? And then it just makes their kisses like so much more magical, because again, they're taking it upon themselves to break the sort of like stature of being at a mic. It just sorry, I'm dramaturgically tingling now.
It's really smart because they've done the other two concerts. The fact that when audiences show up to watch, like I wasn't expecting there to be so much movement when I saw this back in the cinemas in December 2019. When I watched when I saw the opening, because in the opening the prisoners are in front of their mic very kind of in their place. But then you're right, Michael Ball does break that by using his baton to turn the head of Alfie Boe, and it shocked me, because I was like, oh, they're actually going to move in this. It's not just going to be, as you said, kind of, you have to be on your mark, because if you're off your microphone mark, then your sound's going to be off. Like Philip Quast is one of my favorite moments from the 10th is when Philip Quast, when he walks in for Fontaine's arrest, and the microphone head is out of place. So in character, as he's spinning, he turns the microphone head to hit him at the right spot, because he knows if I don't stand in the right spot, then I won't be heard. And Jenny Galloway, I always wonder how well audiences heard her, because for Master of the House, in both at the end of Castle on the Cloud, she isn't standing in front of a microphone, or she is technically. She's sitting in front of the little microphone, but or she's sitting in front of the really tall one off to the left side of the stage for her solo. And I'm like, I don't know how audiences heard her back then, because she isn't like Colin Wilkinson's always lined up with the mic. Like he's always straight on, so you're going to hear him. So, but the fact that by the time you get to the stage concert, the actors could, like the Thénardiers were notorious for this, using all of the stage. Matt Lucas and Katie Sackholm were using that repeatedly. And the fact that you actually got to have Marius punch Thénardier at the wedding.
Yes.
When in the Nick Jonas one, he hands him back the ring. Because they couldn't do a stage punch. The fact that in this one they were actually able to do a stage punch physical. On stage.
Yeah. Like even
it's more physical.
Gavroche's death. You know,
the
first
trust
of all,
drop they do.
The past the past concerts didn't have to include it. They don't include it in this one either. They didn't include it in the stage. No,
concert.
but like there's still the image of him deceased,
dying. Yes.
That really bothered me. That was not, because that is one of the thesis statements of this musical for me. Is that like on the barricade, like one of the first lost is the most innocent. Is the generation upcoming, is the child, right? There's that whole trope throughout this whole story.
Yes.
So the fact that we didn't get to see some sort of that in the other two, I was just, it was a real treat to see it in the stage concert. And then again, I just like quaked because the imagery was so stunning. It was like, you're still holding on. You're still holding on to that. And then there's a little bit of hope of like, he's going to be okay. He's going to be okay. I mean, everyone knows the story. Everyone knows he's not. And then it's when Grantaire gets hit too. And then, okay, he's now not okay. And then there's literally the fall of innocence. He falls.
It's such a great fall.
In
I love that
arms.
Fall.
And I'm like, you did not have to show us any of this, but because you did, you hit the mark. Like, I was sold already, but I was sold in that moment.
Yes.
Yeah. And then the final blow being on
so good.
Yes.
So
the fall
so,
of the red flag. Sorry. I mean
the red. There's once again, the stage concert did a very good job of using what they had available, to taking the best of each of the concerts that have been done to figure out how can we do another concert again, because I guarantee you, Cameron and Natasha's going to do it at the 40th anniversary of Les Mis in 5 years. They're gonna do it. But once again, it'll be interesting to see what they take from each of these previous concerts that they add to the next concert. Like there's always a little bit of a carryover from the previous concert. So I'll be interested to see what happens next. But yeah, definitely it's between the stage and the 10th for me anyway, of best staging. Depends on what you're going for. But I definitely say both of those are the strongest. Poor 25th. It's not getting much love from me right now.
I have a lot of love for that when we get into like individual characters and stuff. Because I think there's a lot of strength packed into the individuals casted in that performance. Yeah. So
Fair. Okay. All right. Well, let's head into the next question, which is, what element of the musical is lost by performing this show in its concert format?
I'm going to let you kick this one off, if that's okay.
Oh. Okay.
Is that okay?
Well, yeah, absolutely. So for me, the biggest thing that's lost, and something I don't think the stage concerts can ever truly capture, is the epicness of this show visually. Like, once again, this is a big box mega musical. The fact that in the original you had this barricade fly out and the turntable, all that epicness, and there's nothing that beats it. Like I still get chills in the theater when I watch this show, and it's at the end of On My Own, and Eponine's standing there, and all of a sudden I hear is the downbeat of the bum bum bum, and the lights change, and in the new production the stage opens and the barricade rolls to the front. In the original it would have been Eponine steps back and the barricade shuts in front of her, blocking her that way. But either way, it's those key moments on stage, the visual images on stage that just can't be captured in a stage concert, because you're just not allotted the ability to have a big set or that type of stuff. That the more the production element of the big set and things like that. And that show is epic. It is an opera for better want of a word, I know technically it's a musical by a lot of people's standards. There is an operatic quality about this where in opera, the sets are big. They are grand. And there is a grandness to the show where you're watching this epic story from 1815 all the way up until I think 1830 something by the time the show is done. But you're watching this sweeping story move through the stage. And you're watching these sets change. Like you're going from the prison to the church with the bishop, to the factory, to the red light district, to a runaway cart, to a courtroom, to Thénardier's Inn, to Paris, to the cafe, to the barricade, to the garden even of Valjean and Cosette. Like there's just, you move, the story moves, and you don't get that experience of watching this epic sweep of production when you're watching it on stage. There's still some beautiful work that can be done, like as we said with the stage concert, they did some beautiful movement to make up for the lack of that, but like there's nothing that beats that first time of sitting in the theater. I can remember this at 3 years old when I saw this. The first time seeing that barricade unfold and come out on stage. It's like watching the chandelier for the first time, Rise in Phantom of the Opera. There is something magic about some of these big spectacles. That's just an element you can never capture because you're not focusing on that. You're focusing on the music and the score, not the... Which is nice because sometimes because of spectacle, you can hide some of the weaker elements of a score or a libretto, like Phantom. That chandelier makes up for a lot of underdeveloped characters, I have to say. But that being said, like with this, I mean, there's a reason why it's run for 35 years. It's because even when you strip away some of the like even when I was in London and seeing it for the first time, the fact that the turntable malfunctioned and they had to stop the show in Act 2 to fix the turntable. That didn't detract from the experience of getting the story and the music. But there is still something lost in not being able to see that grandness. And that's one of the reasons why I like the 10th, because you do get those video clips. Like watching the final battle video, like the original recording of the stage show, and watching the actual, you can actually see the turntable turn and that everlasting image of Enjolras hanging off the barricade with the red flag after he's fallen. One of the most gorgeous stage images ever created. Like, right up there with some of the other great classic stage images. Like, that is such an iconic image. That even when they redid it for the 25th anniversary tour production that's now being used everywhere, like the fact they still had to try and find a way to recreate that image of Enjolras, instead this time of him being on the barricade, he's now hanging out of the cart with all the other bodies. But the fact that when that moment happens in the video, where you're watching the barricade turn and all of a sudden you see Enjolras hanging there, never fails to give me chills. Yeah. And there's just something about that visual image that you just can't get in a concert. Yeah. So yeah, that for me, there's a bit of epicness of the actual show element that's lost. Not the music, but the show itself loses a little bit of that just because of what you're working with. Right. So yeah.
I totally agree with that as well. But I think to me, the element that is lost by doing any show really in concert format, is the characters are sometimes gone because of the star-studded cast. Is a wonderful sort of, again, case study to use. Like, for example, in the 25th, Samantha Barks is Eponine, in my opinion. She is absolutely stunning. Like, just embodies who Eponine is. Flawless voice, never detracts from Eponine. Like, you never see Samantha, and just the gusto she has up until her final breath, like the tears in her eyes, like it's just magical. And then unfortunately, and again, this is not to like shame Nick Jonas, because I had the same kind of problem with John Legend as JC in the past Jesus Christ Superstar concert, right? these are phenomenal artists. And I love them. I'm a huge fan of both Nick Jonas and like John Legend, but they just don't have the same stage training or extended experience as someone like Samantha Barks, who's literally on a stage doing this role always. That's another reason why she is a standout, her and Aljura, in the movie musical, because these are Broadway actors that just happen to be acting in a new medium, and I will always advocate for that, because it bothers me to no end why it still exists that you choose the star over the people who can actually hack it. It's so frustrating to me, and it's not the people they choose. It's not that they are bad artists, but it's just like, you're not a polished Broadway theater artist. There's nothing wrong with that, but like, so for instance, in the 25th version, Eponine and Marius's connection was just not realistic for me. Like, a lot of that dropped, because, and I, in a way, I kind of felt bad for Samantha, because I was like, she's there.
She's performing her heart out, and Nick Jonas is not giving her anything.
But I think Nick Jonas is paying homage and like doing what he can do. It's just not. He doesn't face it every day, right? He's kind of swinging. Well,
he just hasn't had the training to fill that role. I mean, Marius is it's one of the most complicated roles of the show, because it's on one hand, you're the teen heartthrob. And the role is written to be very, I mean, that's one of the reasons why Michael Ball, I love him as Marius, because he plays the teen heartthrob, but then he also has that underlying emotional drive of that character. It's a teenager. On one hand, they are a heart full of love. They're up in their head in love, poetic. And on the other hand, they have a ton of raging hormonal emotions. And Nick Jonas, as much as he played Garrosh when he was a kid on Broadway, he hadn't continued in that type of training. Well, and unfortunately, he was kind of thrown into the deep end without the proper life raft to help him through this. So fortunately, as much as he isn't a horrible, like, as you said to me when we were texting about this, you go, he sings much better than Russell Crowe, and agreed on that point.
Love you, Russell. Like, I think Russell knows.
Russell Crowe. Russell knows. Russell, that whole movie cast knows that they weren't the strongest singers, except for Samantha and Aaron to that. But like Nick Jonas, like he again, if he wasn't with such a strong cast, like maybe just a regular West End cast, maybe it wouldn't have been so obvious of a disconnect. But you're right, poor Samantha Barks in that Little Fall of Rain scene, she is like giving her heart on stage, and Nick Jonas just looks constipated and petrified. So he just doesn't know how to react to that type of performance.
Another thing, so that's kind of like the one spoke is like, you know, casting stars mixed in with regular Broadway performers. But then another spoke of what is lost, because this is like a staged concert, which kind of, now that I say that out loud, that whole phrase kind of places things in a box, right? Like, it's staged. You know, the element of live theater, it's funny because theater is staged, but anything can happen on a run of a show, right? Like, a glass can break this night, or someone is sick this night. It's a changing game always, right? You always are on your toes. But like, a staged concert is this like boxed one-off, you know. So that's kind of lost. But what the other spoke is the loss of just how each performer interprets what a staged concert is. Because again, like, I'll just use the 10th anniversary as an example, which I do think was heavier on vocals, right? And quality, and just like slaying the songs and having the heart in those. But because of that, there was a lot of again, like I said, like, characters melted away. Stories weren't as fleshed out, especially with the edits, right? Because to me, it's like, if you're not only doing a staged concert, but it's also edited away from the original musical, as the artist, like, to me, you almost have to be, in my brain, I'd actorly want to be extra on to like connect those dots for the audience. Even though it's a concert, I just would feel like it's my responsibility to like even be more actorly. And I think that's lost a lot in stage concert. It's like there is that distance of like, okay, now we are singing on my own. And this is living on its own, because I was completely, it's kind of like we took a break. Like I really found this with Leia. It's like we took a break from the musical for her to sing on my own. And then we got back into the musical. And a lot of that for me, again, nothing against Leia, but that concert was done in 95. She had done Jasmine in 92 and did Mulan in 98. So her
she also done Miss Saigon
in
the early 90s as well.
Right. So her voice was kind of like in that like airier Disney princess-esque realm.
Yep. People know who she is.
Right. People know who she is. And so I just felt that was bleeding in a little bit to like her performance. Again, it was like a stunning song and she sang it beautifully, but it wasn't a full Eponine, in my opinion. Like Eponine needs that grit. Like she's been in the sewers, yet she also has like that heart that's going to melt at any moment. Right. So she plays between that, like, she wants to be an ingenue so bad, but she's not, you know? And it's like, she's not. So like, you can't play her that way, right? So that just kind of, it threw me a bit, because performance was great, but it was like, okay, now we're back. Whereas in a staged production, it's the constant flow of the plot, right? You're watching like a thing, but in the concert, I think some artists are like, okay, like I just have to slay the song. It's like, okay, but you still have to like vibe the character, and if that's not there, then
I think also like the stage concert, because of the edits they made, it did detract a little bit from the story. Like the fact that Act 2 opens with On My Own versus the opening at the barricade and Marius sending the letter, Valjean getting the letter, reading the letter, and then you get On My Own. The fact that like you lose, like, or the fact you take out Valjean's confession to Marius, and the Thénardiers at Marius's wedding, and the reveal of the ring, like all those little kind of or minor plot, I don't know if they're minor plot points, but like plot points that kind of got cut away back then that then really kind of amplified and highlighted the solo numbers. Like the fact you also lost Javert's intervention, the fact he saves Valjean from the robbery, only then to realize, oh crap, I just let him go. So the fact that Stars lost a little bit of that drive into that song of, well, why is he singing? Oh, well, because he realized that I guess got as close as I ever been to catching this guy, and crap, I just lost him again. Yeah. It's okay, I'm recommitting to this now. I've been waiting a decade, I know he's here, I'm gonna go find him. Yeah. And that's something where like Norm Lewis and Michael Ball, they had that lead into that song that gave that song with more of a plot punch versus and now Philip Kwass gets out of his chair, steps up to the mic, slays the song because he understands the text to a T, and actually understands like back phrasing and the way and character thought. Like his Javert's United side is by far my favorite because he understands like what's the word? He does a whole masterclass of assonance.
It's funny that he talks about that because
now, allow, or even like
the vowels.
There's the other word he does. Hold on.
Dominion.
Dominion, yes. In fact, he broke down the word dominion. Yeah. And the thought where he goes, I have to rush ahead to allow myself time to think about the word dominion before I say it. Well, when you watch Michael Ball and Norm Lewis do it, you can tell they're not, you can tell the character thought of the word dominion isn't there. So, like, even though Phil Kwass does a fantastic job in the solos, his lead-ins are missing to give it that plot push. You're right, it still does feel like. And now they get up to sing their solo versus an actual follow-through of the entire plot. So I totally get what you're coming from.
Just a quick sort of like Javert intermission before I just cap my thing. What's really so cool, watching the masterclass with Philip Kwass and how he was talking about, like, you hit the assonance, right? Like, there's the vowel sounds are what to really punch home in that song. And it's beautiful how he breaks it down and reads it. And it's funny because going into it, like, he was stunning to me, but I've used that word so many times tonight, but it really is like the word to use for this musical. Norm Lewis was the standout Javert to me because it's, when I put these two together, I'm like, oh my God, that's why I love them both, is because Norm Lewis in me used his consonants for Javert, which I argue can also be done because it's the crisp cutoffs and the T's and the S's and the D's that is like, this is the way, this is the tradition, this is the moral, I will get to the end of it and it will work. Like, that works for Javert. And then hearing the masterclass of Philip Quass and sort of like in his defense of his performance, I'm like, oh my gosh, and the vowels do too, because that's opening up a different scope into him, right? It's like
it's different vocal training. Basically,
yes.
What's going on? Like Philip Quass is a much more traditional vocal, like opera. It's singing opera basically is what he's doing, and he has that very operatic sound. Hence why he's played Emilio in South Pacific. Like he has that big round baritone opera voice, but he also actually well too. But yeah, like just he's so in character that he's the epitome of Javert out of all the Javerts. But Norm Lewis is much more on the acting side, where like if you were to take away the music and Norm Lewis just to speak the part, you would normally not go for the vowel, because when you're normally talking, you don't go for our vowel. Like when we're like, what's the one thing we were taught for as a kid? When you're talking on stage, you hit the end of the word. I want to hear the t, the b, the puz at the end of each of your phrases, because that's what's the audience is gonna pick up on that. And Norm Lewis, right from the very first time he comes out on stage in the prologue, where it's the now prisoner 24601. Your time is up and your parole's begun. I'm like, your parole's begun. Like he's hitting the ends of those, or like right before Who Am I? He will bend, he will break. This time there is no mistake. And you can see the spit lines says those lines.
You love that.
You're right. Like
when you need to take out the umbrella, you know they're doing it right.
Well, I mean, you definitely need to take out the umbrella with Michael Ball, because when you look at his close-ups, his spit is flying.
Right. But yeah.
But I think that's more overacting than actual acting.
Both were like almost tied in my opinion, but it was so fascinating to see how their approaches were so different, but still really got into the character. And okay, so bringing us back, to just kind of cap off the
Lost in
the
performance
idea of using sort of like the staged concert as a way of sort of like it's okay to kind of melt away the character and just sing the song, kind of falling into that trope. I found with a staged concert, a lot of the actors were approaching these pieces in their own voices, but like adding like a pop kind of flair to the songs. Like Carrie Hope Fletcher did this. I'm just, again, I have all the names written because again, I binged them back to back to back. So, Lily Kerhoas. I'm sorry, I'm probably not pronouncing that correct, but it's the Cosette of the stage concert. And Shauna Coe. Both, like all three of them sort of had like a bit more of like a poppy modern vibe. Which I just, usually I would all be for if you could back it up, sort of modernizing a score in a way that works, but inside this
is lame.
This version,
you don't
and
pop
in the musical, in my opinion, the musical in general, it's got to be that like it's like you're singing an anthem, right? Like, and I've had the opportunity to sing anthems at professional sporting events, and I will never deter away from like how the anthem is written, because that is for me, it's like you are there to sing for said country, like you're there as a vehicle. This is not your time to like flex your performance skills. Like it's kind of similar to like folks singing in church or something, right? Like you sing according to the hymn. It's like there's like it's like a respect kind of thing. And I think that this musical deserves that. And like the grit and the heart and the soul is all you, but it's staying true to what is on the page. And I just think that there's a little bit too much liberty taken by some of the voices in this most recent stage concert that again broke you away, because everyone else was staying true to the sort of classical flair. And then I was like, oh, I'm right. I'm watching this in 2019. Right. Because you're like, that person just did a riff where it's not usually riffed. I found Carrie did
Save
that a lot.
those for Hamilton and Wicked.
Carrie did that. Like, Carrie to me stood out the most. Like, she did that a lot in I Dreamed a Dream, and which is it's hard because these songs are done so often. This musical sound, you have so much pressure. By all means, like, you want to make it your own. Exactly. And you have every right to do that. But I just think if you take I think that it's make it your own in a sense of like, make it your true person. Don't make it your own style, you know, like the style doesn't change.
Well said. Yeah.
It's the, it's the heart and the face behind it that changes. That's all.
Yeah.
Like, you could arguably say that about
makes
like
total sense to me.
A Romeo and Juliet kind of thing, right? Like, a bajillion versions have been done of that. But, you know, if you play Romeo as this, like, aggressive, villainous person, you know, or, like, add something that retracts from his, you know, heartthrob dweebiness, it just takes away from the character.
Well,
right?
As a performer, it's about knowing the musical. Like, there are some musicals that you can do riffs, like Wicked. I keep bringing Wicked, but Wicked actually has, for the actresses playing Glinda and Elphaba, like 3 different riffs you can do. For example, at the end of The Wizard and I.
Yeah.
Or at the end of Defying Gravity. There are 3 set riffs that, as an actor, you can choose from that have been set that you can then play with.
Yeah.
Phantom, Les Mis, even Cats, I would say. A lot more the classic.
Yeah.
Evita. A lot more of these older classic shows. You got to be really careful. Unless you're doing something like the most recent production of Oklahoma, which was very modern. And when you do a modern one, you can't have Ali Stoker riffing the heck out of I Can't Say No. Because the dramaturgical due diligence has been done.
Yeah. To
allow you
carved out to do that.
To allow that. Yeah. You're in 1800s France. I'm sorry. They did not riff in 1800s France. This is an opera for the better sake of a term. This is an opera score. Ergo, you gotta be really careful about how you do that. And you're right. This stage concert was very loosey-goosey.
Yeah.
How they riff themselves through the score.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Coming at you here, I'm sure you're probably wondering, what just happened on my screen? Well, Jill and I just finished our recording of this piece, and it clocked in at over 2 hours. And because this is meant to be a shorter review series, we decided to split this in half. Just like in Les Mis, you have your act 1 that ends at the titular one day more moment. And then next week, we're going to jump in with part 2, where we're going to talk a whole bunch of things, including our dream casting for this show. We're going to talk about what we think about the concept of stage concerts and how it's kind of become a useful tool in our current pandemic climate. And we'll answer the big final question of, is this worth the watch overall? But we thank you for watching part 1. We look forward to having you all come back for part 2, which will be next Wednesday. But in the meantime, just stay tuned. And in the meantime, actually go rent a copy of the Les Mis stage concert. Jill, where did you rent it and how much was it? Give us the lowdown.
Yes, I rented it at YouTube on YouTube, and it was $4.99. So
perfect.
So affordable. And if you want to be like me and binge watch the 10th, the 25th, and this recent stage concert so that you are fully abreast for part 2 of this episode, do it. They're all worth the watch. So
Agreed. Yeah, you can watch the 25th. You can rent it off YouTube or iTunes. You can also watch it on Broadway HD. You can watch the 10th on YouTube. Just type in Les Misérables 10th anniversary concert. You'll find it either split into multiple parts or just one full chunk of film. So watch those in the meantime. But thank you, everybody. Stay tuned for next week, where we're going to wrap up our review of Les Misérables, the stage concert. In the meantime, everybody, stay healthy, stay safe, and remember, one day more at this point.
Cheers,
Thank
folks.
you. Bye.
Bye.